Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. I am very excited to have today's guest back on the podcast again. I don't know, for the third time, fourth time. I lost track. It's Lucy Hendricks. Welcome back to the podcast, Lucy.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you. For folks who may be getting to know you for the first time, Lucy is the co-founder of Enhancing Life Fitness, which is in Lexington, Kentucky. And she's been on the podcast many times because I always learn a lot from talking to Lucy, and I'm sure today will be no exception. Do you want to just tell the people, Lucy, just your short story, how'd you come to be a gym owner, and tell us a little bit about Enhancing Life?
Yeah, so I own a gym in Lexington, Kentucky, and we're known for working with people in pain or people who are very intimidated by big box gyms. So it's a small boutique setting. And I've owned a gym for 9 years now. And like most people, you go into owning a gym thinking you're going to do great because you're a great trainer.
Yep.
But then you realize the skills that are required to be a good gym owner are definitely not just being good on the training floor, and that's how I ended up finding you all.
Yeah.
So for the last 6 years, I've been working on all the different skills outside of the training floor so I can be a better gym owner.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think we've been officially together since 2020. Trying to think of when you just think that's the year you joined, right?
Yeah, we met in 2019.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Well, I love that. And I think that what you just said, I think resonates with a lot with our listeners, which is people get into this because of the training and they think that they're going to be successful because they're a great trainer. And yes, you need to be good at the training, and running a gym is about so much more, right? And over time, we have to learn to get good at multiple skills and hiring people for all those other skills. So that's amazing. It's been a pleasure working with you all these years, and I'm sure for many more years to come, which is why I wanted to have you on today's podcast, because there's a little bit of a story about how we got here. But where did this idea first come up? Was it actually in the Facebook group? I think it might have been in the Facebook group, but someone brought up the idea asked the question somewhere in Unicorn Society about how do you handle politics in the gym? And I think Lucy and I both dove in because we love this question so much. We love sticky conversations. We love trying to create inclusive spaces. So we wanted to kind of tackle that initial question and expand this conversation to be not just about politics in the gym, but how do you handle people with extreme different perspectives, preferences, ideas, identities? How do you make your gym an inclusive space, not just on the political spectrum, but on all the possible spectrums of identity and opinion that one can have these days? Because I think we can all agree that just being a gym is a little bit like being a community center, and you attract people from hopefully all different walks of life. And if you live in a diverse place, you're going to attract people with diverse opinions and identities and perspectives. And many of us are not comfortable navigating those choppy waters. And so Lucy and I just want to share a little bit of our thoughts. We're not experts here, but certainly we have a lot of experience we can share. And so let's just start with the very first question, which I know is maybe not the most fun part of this conversation for us. But when it comes to politics, Lucy, right? Like you're in Kentucky, right? I imagine it's probably not the most diverse place in terms of political perspectives, but you tell me, what's been your experience in navigating the politics inside the gym?
You'd be surprised how diverse it is here.
Yeah, I probably would be. Yeah.
For me, it has shifted over the years because one thing I think that people don't realize is that you're very stuck in an echo chamber. So there are times, right or left or in the middle, you think that most people are on your side.
Sure.
And you think that most people think the way you think. And that was my experience in the beginning. 6-7 years ago, I wanted no Republicans in my gym. I wanted, if I found out someone voted for Trump, I remember telling Dave, like, I don't want them here. And he's like, well, we're too broke for for telling someone to leave.
We need their money.
Yeah. And I didn't realize how loud I was, that other people were just being silent. And during COVID, when I went through a very stressful situation and I learned that I was being too divisive and really stuck in an echo chamber, that's when I realized, wow, it's almost 50-50 at my gym. It is a very diverse place. I had no idea. I thought everybody was on my side and just the few people were on a different side.
Yep.
So I would say here in Lexington, it's a very liberal town, but it is Kentucky.
Yep.
But I would say it's pretty much a 50-50 split.
Yeah, yeah, that is it's interesting to know. And I'd say I think in New York, in Manhattan specifically, and specifically in I'm at Mark Fisher Fitness in Hell's Kitchen for the 13 years we had that location. It was an echo chamber. It was the definition of an echo chamber, a left echo chamber. I'd be shocked to know that we had anyone who's ever stepped foot in Mark Fisher Fitness that voted Republican. And maybe I'm totally wrong about that. Obviously, I'm in the echo chamber, right? So I have no idea. I'm curious to get Mark's opinion about that. I'm sure there are a few. I'm probably exaggerating here to make a point, but I think the point is that even still, the point I wanted to make about that is that even though Mark Fisher Fitness was kind of an echo chamber of leftist ideology and politics, we still had a lot of friction. We still had a ton of political friction because we know these days the difference between someone on the far left is very different than someone who's dancing in the center of our American politics. And so even that distance created a real friction at the gym. And so let's just stay on politics for now, and then we'll open up to maybe other kinds of difference at the gym. But when it comes to just political talk at the gym, people agreeing, disagreeing, talking about the news, talking about who they voted for, like how do you handle tension when it comes up in the gym on these topics?
You'll be surprised, or maybe not you, but most people on the left think that people on the right are the loudest and they are the ones that yell out
Mm-hmm.
their opinions.
Yeah,
But I find that it's the complete opposite.
sure.
And I know where pretty much everybody aligns, and it's the opposite. Usually the left can be loud and they can say whatever they want to say, and people on the right tend to be quiet and not say anything at all. And
Yeah,
so that's usually the culture that I have not created in here,
sure.
but it's just what happens.
Yeah. What do you do when you see that those two clients on the floor who are maybe disagreeing to the point that other people are uncomfortable, or one person's opinion is so loud that it's kind of disruptive to people's experience? Like, how do you navigate those sticky moments?
There's only one time where I felt like I had to intervene, and it
Mm.
was about RFK. And this is
Oh,
where I
sure,
think it's really in my wheelhouse, the alternative health side of things, because
sure.
I grew up in alternative health.
Mm.
And that's where I had to send an email to a client because they made a comment about RFK, and I acted a little bit ignorant because I didn't want to feed into it because I was agreeing with what she was saying.
Sure.
And she was being really loud about it. And then she was like, You know who RFK is, right, Lucy?" I'm like, I am very aware of who RFK is, yes. And I felt like if I didn't say anything, that she would come back later on to try to educate me. Like, you can't
Mm.
be ignorant to politics. You have to know this because not
Sure.
knowing is wrong. So I sent out an email saying, hey, when it comes to politics or things that are very divisive, especially when it comes to alternative health, and
Yeah.
alternative health has now become political,
Yeah.
talking or mocking RFK's intelligence is like mocking the people that believe in him. And we have a
Hmm.
lot of people in our gym that believe the things that he says.
Yep.
I don't believe in those things or a lot of those things, but I understand how people got there. And
Sure.
so there it was my opportunity to talk about being curious and really
Hmm.
asking ourselves, how did people get to those beliefs, especially alternative health?
Sure.
So when you look at their history or look what they've gone through, it starts to make sense why they believe in the crazy things that RFK is saying. And so
Yeah.
for me to mock someone in politics is also mocking the people that truly believe them.
Yeah.
So when you bring these things up, just know that I can't act a certain way, or I can't take a side. So that was
Sure.
basically what you said the other day or a while ago, is like we're playing Switzerland. It's like
Yeah.
I can't give in too much into whatever side I'm in.
Yeah, I think you handled that beautifully. And listen, I'll start this podcast by saying I'm not having this conversation with Lucy today because I want to convince anyone listening to run their gym in a certain way. You can run your gym however you want. If you want your gym to be a beacon of leftist or rightist politics or centrist politics, you go ahead and you plaster those politics on your front wall if you want to. When I work with Unicorn Study members, and Lucy included, what I tend to recommend, which I think is probably what best serves the overall business, is that as a business, we can both advocate for the things we care about in this world and fund certain charities. But when it comes to the client experience every day, I think it's best for us to think of ourselves like Switzerland, right? That our job is to make an inclusive space where two different types of people, whether it be gender identity or political identity or socioeconomic status, right? The people of different backgrounds, beliefs, identities, opinions can come together and work out for 1 hour of their day and not have their identity, selves, opinions be threatened, right? That they can have a somewhat comfortable, if not exciting, rewarding, inspiring experience at our gym. That's what we all want for all of our clients every day. And I think to get that, we have to navigate these tensions thoughtfully. And I think, Lucy, you said like the magic keyword, which is how do we get curious in the face of difference, right? How do we get curious in the face of different perspectives and opinions, and get curious about where those perspectives and opinions came from? Because it's very easy to dehumanize the person and be like, oh, well, they're just all idiots, or they're just all woke, or they're just all right. That's easy. It's boring. That's, what's harder is to try to see the humanity in them, try to see their background, see their history, and get curious. And so let's just stay on that idea for a second. What are some of like the tools of curiosity, right? I know you and I are big nerds about this topic, but what does it look like for you as the owner and for you as your team to get curious in those moments of tension with clients?
So we have a sheet that everybody fills out at the end of the shift. And one question at the end is like, what's something that you were judgmental about that you could be more curious about? Because sometimes in the moment it's really hard. You're going to make that judgment right away. But can you reflect back and then ask yourself these questions of like, well, I wonder how they got there. What would have had to happen for them to believe these certain things, especially when it comes to alternative health. It's very easy to find the points that got people to believe some of the crazy things that they hear RFK say. And so really asking yourself open-ended questions and being curious on how these people got to where they are, that's step number one.
Yeah, I think it's great for you as the owner and to teach your team, like, what are open-ended questions? How do you get curious? How do you try to overcome that impulse of judgment to find curiosity in those moments? And I think it's hard to do. It's easy to say and kind of a hard practice. It does actually take practice. So I think for some of you, that means maybe doing role-playing some of these conversations in team meetings, or role-playing some of these conversations in one-on-ones. But let's go back and just pull this, right? Because you've mentioned this a few times, and I want to maybe you can give us an example of, there are some people who come to opinions, ideas, perspectives that are far different from yours, and we get curious about that. We learn what's the background of that information. And you had a few, I think, examples before we started recording that were really useful about when you did get curious, you learn that people have really good reasons for having their beliefs. What's an example that you can share?
When it comes to alternative health, that's a big one. So I grew up in alternative health. And very woo-woo mom, because she felt like the medical establishment wasn't really paying attention to her son who had a learning disability. They wanted to put him on medications, and that didn't feel right to her. So she did all the stuff that you hear the Maha people talking about, like gluten-free, seed oils, food dyes, all this stuff. And back in the day when I was 5 and 10, there wasn't social media. So my mom was on these private little group chats that she had to find deep on the internet. And these people were like, if you got rid of gluten, or my son stopped eating gluten and he was autistic and now he's speaking again, or my daughter couldn't speak and I got rid of all these food dyes and now she's speaking again. So my mom was trying all these things, and a lot of these things worked. We also did a lot of crazy things like getting arm testing or crystals put on our body by these crazy doctors. And what people don't realize is that there is a sea of people getting these crazy results. These people were suffering. They went to every single medical professional. They went to all these different doctors, and then they changed something that someone on the internet said, and they started feeling better. Now I'm older, and I realize maybe these things work for different reasons.
Maybe it wasn't all causal, right? But still, they started feeling better for some reason, and their effort felt like, connected to that.
Exactly. And like any teenager, I rebelled when I got older. But then I went back into alternative health by getting into the paleo community. And I spoke at these big paleo events on breathing and movement. But in these events, you meet people, and every single person has a story, and the story is the same. They were suffering, or their
Yep.
loved one was suffering, or their kid was suffering. They went to 20 different doctors. Everybody said you were normal or they can't do anything about it. And then they changed their diet with these alternative health perspectives and they got better. And you can't dismiss that. It doesn't mean that they're factual, it doesn't mean that they're evidence-based, but you can't take away their story. So how can you talk to this person and respect their story and maybe try to get them to change their perspective? For example, seed oils. If someone comes up to me and they're like, well, whatever the leftists are saying about seed oils is not right, because when I cut out seed oils, I feel better.
Yep.
How can you validate that person's experience and slowly start to get them to think differently?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's beautifully said, Lucy. I think that's exactly the role that we as like helping professionals can play, right? Is we're not explicitly trying to change everyone's mind always if we disagree with them. But one of the things we can start with is honoring their story, learning their story, understanding where their perspective or opinions came from, especially when it comes to alternative health or history of chronic pain. And you work with a lot of people in pain. When it comes to people of different racial or racial identities, ethnic identities, gender identities, right? If you don't understand where this person's coming from, the most important thing you can do to be someone that's a helping professional in our case is to at least learn. At least be curious enough to learn about their background, their experience, their story. And if at some point you have an opportunity to encourage them or inspire them to think differently or try something new or get outside their own box, great. But alternatively, this is also a chance for you to think differently, right? And be open to you changing your mind about the way they think and their story inspire your thoughts and opinions. So I think that's ultimately when we talk about kind of being Switzerland, it's actually not a passive role at all. It's actually a very active role. It's an engaging role of learning and honoring people's stories and identities and being open-minded enough to shift, encouraging them to shift, allowing, being open to shifting yourself. And that's hard to do. That's much harder to do than just digging your heels in and believing in one siloed point of view. So thank you for sharing that and sharing it so beautifully. Let's just maybe talk about other kinds of inclusion in the space. So I mentioned just a second ago, you work with a lot of people in chronic pain who've had a lot of long-term injury histories and things like that. And pain these days is politicized, right? Right. For a million reasons. There's also a ton of research that shows that, there's a real bias when it comes to pain in our medical spaces, right? Women are not believed. People of color are not believed when they express pain, where men say they're in pain and they're given drugs immediately, especially white men, right? And so there's a lot to be said about how we treat people in pain. And in our gym spaces, it's very easy to be flippant about people's pain and not believe them, right? But this goes to everything we've been saying is like, what if we got curious about their stories and their backstories about pain? What can come of that? So I'm sure you have a million examples here, but how do you approach this at your gym?
I have endless examples.
I know we could do this for 900 years. Yeah.
So when it comes to pain, there's a term called maladaptive belief.
Mm-hmm.
And what a maladaptive belief is, it's a belief deep down into their brain that is not based off of the current evidence that we have. And the issue with pain is that our knowledge about it has evolved over the years. So a lot of people have beliefs around pain, not just regular people, but medical professionals that are completely outdated.
Mm-hmm.
And one way that we used to look at pain was very biomedical. That means that if something hurts, that means something must be wrong with the tissues or the bones. There must be some damage. But now we know that pain is multifactorial. Mm-hmm. And so now we look at it from the lens of the biopsychosocial model. And that means that there's thousands of factors that go into why someone must be experiencing pain.
Yep.
And so people have really bad maladaptive beliefs around their pain. So when they feel a pain, they might think that their ribs just popped out of place. Mm-hmm. And that's a maladaptive belief. That is actually not true. It's not based off evidence. That can't happen. Yeah. But you can't just say that to someone day one. Trust me, I've tried.
Yeah, I'm sure.
As soon as I found out that bones don't go out of place, I'm like, Mom, You've been believing a lie.
Your bones are fine. Your bones, yeah,
I was like, that's actually not what's happening. And she's like, no, actually, that is what's happening. So there, I'm invalidating her story,
sure.
her own experience. And she even went behind my back and continued to go to the chiropractor. So
Yeah.
that's how successful people are if you're jumping straight to being
Just
invalidating.
tell
and
people they're
not-
wrong. It doesn't go very far.
No, because my mom goes to the chiropractor. She gets popped back into place, and for people who can't see me, I'm using that in quotes.
Yeah.
So therefore, that belief gets ingrained, and it just gets reinforced year after year. So it's
Yeah.
really hard to work through those beliefs. And when it comes to pain, I find that it's a lot easier to use their own experience to slowly move out of these maladaptive beliefs, which means that can take time. So you have to be very patient, and you have to build a lot of trust.
Yeah.
And what that looks like, let's say someone has back pain. That's their chronic issue. That's what they have maladaptive beliefs around. So they're really scared to feel their back pain. Because for them, feeling that pain takes them back to a really dark place in their life.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
It comes with a lot of meaning, right? It comes with a lot of meaning.
Yep. And so for the professional, them tweaking their back is not that big of a deal, but you have to put yourself in their shoes, because to them, it's taking them back to a place where their marriage got ruined, they lost their job because they were debilitated. So you really have to put yourself in their shoes. So using something else in their body. So let's say their knee was hurting after a certain exercise, but they don't have that deep emotional connection to their knee. It's not that big of a deal. So after a couple days, it feels fine, and they trust you enough to have them do the exercise again. Because
Sure.
you'll tell them, you might not feel that pain at all. The body is adaptable. They do the exercise again, their knee feels fine. Now you can make that connection. So you know how your knee felt fine after 2 days, and you tried the exercise again?
Yep.
Your back might be the same.
Yeah.
So would you be willing to try that exercise again, even though you twinged your back last week?
Sure.
And that's how you can slowly start changing people's beliefs around their own pain, by using their own experience.
Yeah. Let them help them acquire evidence, right? The reason they have their beliefs they have, right, is often they have this backstory of acquiring lots of evidence,
Yeah.
right? Factual and non-factual evidence, right? That something is true. And so if you help them acquire a new basket of evidence that works with their belief system, then things can shift. Things can
Yeah.
shift. But I love that it was built on a foundation of empathy, right? That approach is built on a foundation of curiosity, of experimentation, right? Of letting them lead, right? And not invalidating them, right? And I think that all is like just a chef's kiss of like perfect way to help take care of people in a way that meets them where they're at, right? We talk about that all the time as helping professionals, is we want to meet people where they're at and help them from that place, as opposed to judging or shaming or blaming. And so that's a beautiful example. Any other places in your gym, Lucy, where there becomes kind of friction of identities or ideas? We talked about politics, we talked about pain, we talked about, alternative health beliefs. Any other areas that have become kind of frictionful?
Not
Moments?
necessarily
No.
with the clients, but with the coaches. And this
Oh, yeah.
is the same with everybody.
Yeah.
When you see someone not change, and they're so desperate to feel better, they're in a lot of pain, or they're dealing with a lot of issues, or they're a fat loss client and they just keep failing and failing, it's
Yeah.
really easy for the coach to jump into this judgmental state.
Oh,
where
yeah.
it's like, come on, like, how bad does it have to get for
100%.
you to want the change? So to always remind yourself that there could be something else going on that you have
Yeah.
no idea about. That maybe fitness or them getting out of pain is not that big of a priority. It might be for you as a coach,
Yeah.
but maybe their kid is sick, or maybe they're caretaking one of their parents,
Yeah.
and that's taking all their extra energy. You have no idea.
You have no idea. Their job could be stressful. They could have other things going on in their relationships, right? There's so many things. But you're right. I think it's a really great point, is that, the only way that we can serve people in the ways we've been talking about on this podcast is if our team is really on the same page and they feel like they have the right tools and skills to be able to do that. If not, I absolutely have seen teams with the best intentions, really, really caring, loving teams of helping professionals. Even when I worked in hospitality, I saw this. People who are really dedicated to serve our customers and our guests, really venture into this place of becoming kind of cynical customer service agents, right? Where it's so easy to kind of bitch about the customers and bitch about the clients and be like, they don't really even care. I mean, I'm working with them for 6 months. I don't think they even really care about their health, or they're just lazy. They're just lazy, or just they have no discipline. It's so easy to go to that kind of jaded place where we just kind of talk shit about clients. And then nothing is more poisonous to an environment than a coaching team that has kind of given up on compassion and empathy and just assumes the worst in people. You just can't serve them anymore authentically. If really behind the scenes you're talking shit and not believing your clients, then I feel like it's so hard to show up and be genuinely interested in supporting them when they are in the building. I think it's just kind of impossible. I think that kind of behind the scenes talk is something that all of you listening should be looking out for in your gym. I'll say this. I also want to say it's okay to vent once in a while. Like right. Sometimes there's someone on your team who needs to get something off their chest because there's a client who genuinely annoys them, right? But that's different. Venting, gossip, like I think there's a place for some of that, to be honest. But it's in the persistent kind of culture of negative talk about clients, assuming that they don't have their best interests in heart, assuming they're just dumb or lazy. Like it's that kind of stuff I think is really insidious. Yeah. So what kind of things do you do with your team? And last question as we wrap things up. What do you do with your team? Because clearly you're good at this. You've been practicing these skills and these conversations for many years. I know you have a relatively new-ish team. I mean, most of your team's been around for, I think, under 5 years, right? And so you've been grooming them and training them all this time to kind of take this approach to caring for your clients. How do you help your team get good at this?
Allowing them to vent. So I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a difference between venting, because it's a lot. It's to hold these people's pain and to see them struggle. That is a lot for the coach and the people who are here. And you were the one that gave me the idea that being available to my team for them to vent, because in that moment I can help them reframe things.
Yes.
So venting, but then it starts to jump into being judgmental. So then I can start asking questions like, well, do you think something else could be going on?
Sure.
Or the reminder that I got from my therapist last year was a really good one, because I found myself, or I know that I can't healthily detach from someone's issues when I'm getting upset. And he gave me a really good one-liner where he said, didn't you have to hit rock bottom for you to want to change? Yeah. Why are you trying to take away their pain that is going to eventually lead to change? Yeah. Why are you trying to jump ahead? And that was a really good point, that I had to hit rock bottom with a lot of things that I eventually ended up changing. So maybe my client hasn't hit rock bottom. So just learning how to reframe and ask better questions, or even think something else could be going on.
Yeah, I think it's an important part of how we teach our team to act with our clients, is help them understand and kind of honor everyone's story and everyone's journey, even if it's a little different. Even if our clients are on a journey that we don't think is optimal or ideal, or we wish they were on a different journey, or we wish they were on a more similar journey so we could all help them more efficiently. But they're not. We're messy humans. I think the more we can teach our team to lead with that kind of empathy and that curiosity, I think and helping them reframe those negative thoughts they have about clients. Say, okay, well, what can we learn from this client? If this client is our teacher, what are they trying to teach us? If we stay open-ended, open-minded and curious about this client, what could we be missing?
Yeah.
What else could be going on in their life and their work and their body, that we don't know about? How do we get more curious? I think, all of those are fantastic exercises, and those skills don't come naturally to a lot of folks.
Yeah. And I think the key there is asking open-ended questions.
Yeah.
And that's easier said than done. And when I teach workshops, that's the first thing that I get people to start asking is make it, you can either role play with your team a ton, and you can role play with people, but then that means that the only time you get that practice is when you're doing the role playing.
Yep.
Or you can just integrate it in your life. Anytime someone asks you a question, if it's your friend or just in a regular conversation, challenge yourself to ask open-ended questions, and eventually it'll become the way you ask questions.
100%. It becomes just a habit. It becomes easier, just as easy to do as not do. Yeah.
Because I remember looking at you, I'm like, there's just no way I would have to change my personality or who I am. And it does seem robotic when you're trying to change how to communicate.
Yeah.
But now I get comments with my friends like, oh, there goes Lucy with her questions. I
Well,
don't
I
even
was
notice I'm doing it.
totally when I teach coaching skills and coaching conversation skills. I've obviously been doing it for years. I always start those classes by saying, learning these skills is like learning a new language,
Yeah.
right? And you can easily, people who speak multiple language can easily turn it on and off, right? They often can think or not think in those other languages, and learning to ask questions differently, to listen differently, to communicate differently. We all do it in different areas of our life. We all speak different languages with our friends than we do with our family, than we do, but it's more subtle. And sometimes learning kind of these coaching skills is really more extreme version of another language. But you can practice and learn, and you will learn it. And at first it's mechanical. You have to memorize some phrases. And after a time, it feels really natural to lead conversations with this kind of empathy and curiosity. Well, let's leave it there. Thank you, Lucy. This was a great conversation. We could probably make this another couple hours with all the examples and stories we could tell. But I think this was a really great overview of how to make our fitness spaces, our gyms, just more inclusive environments. And there's a lot more we can say on the idea of inclusion and equity and all of that. But I think for now, I think this is a really great start to how people can approach it. Maybe closing thought from you, if there's people listening who are like, hey, I want to get started with my team and open this conversation up for the first time, where do they start?
In a meeting, and the meeting is around open-ended questions and curiosity.
Yeah.
And the activity that I like to start with is think of a time where someone really understood you or misjudged you, and you weren't able to share your perspective.
Yeah.
Where they saw you in a way that didn't really match who you were intending to be.
Yeah.
And write down 2 questions that person could have asked to get your perspective.
Beautiful.
And I bet those 2 questions are open-ended questions.
Yeah.
The how, the why, the what. And now start really integrating these open-ended questions and have that as a skill. So then you can start being more curious.
Yeah. Love it. Beautiful exercise. I love that framing. It gets them to think about their own experience and identity and how they could be misunderstood. I think it's beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you as always, Lucy. I always said I learned something when we talk, and today was no exception. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And dear listeners, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you all on the next one. Have a kick-ass day.